Many people have friends who they've known for basically their entire lives. Childhood friends who have stuck with you through thick and thin. The type of friend that you would trust with your life because you know that they would never do anything to harm you. In fact, they want the absolute best for you. But what happens when your lifelong friend has a dark, twisted side to them that nobody else could see? And what happens when you trust that person to do what's right, not knowing their true colors? Well, in Keeley Bunker's case, she had a close friend who she thought she could trust. But in the end, this friend was the very person who took advantage of her in the worst way possible. And after hearing the details of this case, you will be left with a harrowing question. Who can you really trust if not your closest friends? But before we get into today's case, I want to say a huge thank you to Dime Beauty for partnering with me on today's video. Dime Beauty has been my go-to skincare routine for addressing my skin's many needs. I'm someone who's always struggled to figure out exactly what my skin needs. I struggle with rosacea and dryness as well as uneven skin tone, so I never feel like my skin looks nice unless I'm wearing makeup. But with Dime's best-selling all-in-one system, The Works, you will get all of the essentials for a straightforward, results-driven skincare routine. I actually don't wash my face in the morning because, again, I have dry skin, so all I use is Dime's Dewy Day Cream to keep my face hydrated all day. Then at night, that's where the real action happens. I start by washing my face with their Gentle Jelly Cleanser. I follow that with their Super Skin Toner to help even out my skin tone. Then I use their hyaluronic acid system to hydrate and plump the skin. Then I end with their restorative night cream to lock everything in and make sure my skin is hydrating as I sleep. I love the luxury look of Dime skincare products along with just how easy it was to find an all-encompassing routine that works for my needs. Dime skincare line is as clean as it is effective, making it that much easier for you to get started on a skincare routine that works for you. Unlike most skincare brands, Dime Beauty offers complete transparency about what's in their products, which is so important to me. Every ingredient is listed on their site and is included intentionally. Plus, each of their formulations have earned third-party approval from the Environmental Working Group. I know that I can trust what I'm putting on my skin with Dime Beauty because there are no added fragrances, none of their products contain parabens, sulfates, phthalates, or BPA, BPS, and they are Leaping Bunny certified. I have found that adding Dime to my night and morning routine has been so effective at taking my dry, irritated skin to feeling smooth, bouncy, and hydrated all day. Plus, their products are vegan and cruelty-free, which is also so important to me. All of their products are made in the US and are packaged in biodegradable, 100% recycled material. Dime's goal is to bring luxury and intention into every routine without costing you an arm and a leg. Each one of their products is under $60, making it more affordable while maintaining effectiveness. But if Dime's products aren't exactly what you're looking for, they offer a 100% guarantee and 60-day return. I have loved the results that I've noticed since starting Dime, and I know you will too. So give Dime Beauty a try for yourself. Head to dimebeautyco.com/Shannon20 and enter code Shannon20 at checkout to get 20% off of your skincare routine. Once again, that's dimebeautyco.com/Shannon20 using code Shannon20 at checkout to get 20% off of your skincare routine. Thank you again so much to Dime Beauty for partnering with me on today's video. With all of that being said, let's get into today's case. Today, we are going to be discussing the horrific, devastating case of Keeley Bunker. Keeley Bunker was born on September 7th, 1999 to parents Christopher Bunker and Deborah Watkins, and she lived in Tamworth, Staffordshire, England. Family described Keeley as the kindest, most loving, and compassionate person you could meet. She was known to love those around her unconditionally, and she always put others before herself. She helped her aunt take care of her cousin, who had disabilities, as well as her other children, just to help take the pressure off and make her aunt's life easier. Family said that she didn't have a bad bone in her body. Keeley loved children, hoping to one day work as a teacher. That was her dream job. Keeley was also known to be popular, spending as much time with her friends as she could. So Wednesday, September 28th, 2019 was a day that Keeley was very much looking forward to. She and a close friend, Monique, had tickets to a concert to see the rapper H at the O2 music venue in Birmingham. She had just turned 20 a week and a half prior, and this was a way that she could celebrate with her friend. The two went to a concert and had an amazing time together. But once it was over at around 10 p.m., the friends decided to keep their night going. So Keeley and Monique first headed to the New Street station in Birmingham to meet up with a friend, 20-year-old Wesley Street, who was a childhood friend of Keeley's. The two had literally known each other since preschool. From there, they headed to the Snob nightclub, arriving by around 10:40 p.m. There, they had a few drinks, celebrated, and danced the night away. They spent the next 4 hours there, with the girls drinking 3 or 4 drinks total, and Wesley probably having about double that. One friend who met up with the 3 friends, Josh, described that Keeley, Monique, and Wesley did all get drunk. Wesley especially, though, he was a silly drunk, as his friend would describe it, but he wasn't ever known to be aggressive, violent, or have any sort of outbursts when he would drink. He was just giggly, dancy, and having a good time. By 2:40 a.m., the group decided to leave the club and all shared a taxi back to Monique's house in Tamworth, which is where all 3 of them were from. During the cab ride, apparently Wesley had to stop and get out for a moment because he wasn't feeling well. I feel like some of us have experienced that, where you drink too much, but you don't really feel all that bad until you get into the car, and then all of a sudden, it all hits you at once, and then you have to throw up. But after that, they all headed back to Monique's place. Kelly had left some of her belongings there, so she wanted to stop and pick everything up. By 3:30 a.m., a cab dropped the friends off right by Monique's place. At that point, it was super late, so Monique asked Keeley if she wanted to spend the night there. After all, Keeley's place was about a 20-minute walk away from Monique's house, so it would be a hot minute before she finally got to bed. But Keeley declined. She said that she was tired, but she had an interview the following day, so she wanted to make sure she got some good sleep in her own bed. Now, Keeley absolutely loved working with kids, as I stated before, and that job the following day was at a preschool, so it was a dream job for her. It was scheduled for 2 p.m., so she wanted to make sure that she could get home, get some good sleep in her own bed, which is totally understandable, and make sure that she's all ready for her big job interview. She assured Monique that she would be fine walking home. After all, she said to Monique, "I've got Wes. I'll be fine. I'll walk with him. I'll be safe." Again, the two had known each other for so long, and Wes lived in the same direction as Keeley, so it made perfect sense for him to walk her home. So by 4 a.m., the two left, Monique feeling at ease, knowing that Keeley would be walking home with her trusted male friend who was sure to protect her from any unexpected issues. However, by the following day, Thursday, September 29th, or I guess later the same day, family and friends became concerned because nobody had heard from Keeley in several hours. By 12:30 p.m., Monique had texted Keeley making sure she got home okay, but she got no answer. After that, Monique contacted Wes asking if she stayed with him, but he told her that she didn't. He told Monique that as they were walking home, they stopped at Wes's house because he had to throw up again. So he went inside, leaving Keeley by herself at a telephone box near his home. After that, he had assumed that Keeley walked by herself the rest of the way home. At that point, Monique reached out to other friends and family of Keeley, all asking if they had seen or heard from her, but nobody had. By that point, both Monique and Wes, as well as the other friend Cameron, all met up to discuss what to do. At that time, Monique noticed that Wes was complaining about how people were blaming him for not walking Keeley all the way home. Apparently, people had been texting him saying that he should have walked her all the way home, and if he had, this wouldn't have happened. Of course, he said that he felt terrible, so him, Monique, and Cameron all went out to search for Keeley. Wes walked the group along the path that he said the pair took from Monique's house until that telephone box, but of course they couldn't find her or any sign of her. By 2 p.m., it was time for Keeley's highly anticipated interview that she had with the preschool. But she did not show. Again, this was a job that Keeley had always dreamed of. She always wanted to work with kids, so this was not something that she would have missed intentionally. By around 5 p.m. that same day, Christopher, Keeley's father, had returned home from work, only to find that different friends of Keeley's had been calling and texting him all day, all telling him that Keeley was missing. He immediately called Monique and asked her what was going on, and she explained the situation, saying that she was last known to have walked home with Wes. Christopher asked for Wes's number and called him right away, now asking him where his daughter was. Once again, he told Christopher that he parted ways with Keeley at that telephone box, trusting that she would make it home on her own. Wes told Christopher that Keeley wasn't really drunk that night, so he thought that she would make it home fine. That is why he was okay parting ways with her. When no one was able to provide answers for where Keeley was, by 5:30 p.m. on September 19th, 2019, Christopher called the police to report Keeley as a missing person. An hour later, several family members, friends, and authorities all set out to search for Keeley, including Keeley's uncle, Jason Brown. By around 7 p.m., Jason met up with Monique and Cameron by the railway bridge on Tennyson Avenue, which is close to where Wes claimed to have last seen Keeley. Nearby was Wigington Park, and hours earlier, someone had spotted Keeley's jacket nearby. So, Jason headed a search group who started looking over there, while Monique and Cameron met up with Christopher to help him search. As that was going on, police officers met with Wes to get his side of the story. They asked that he ride with them in their police car so that he can direct them as they drove along the path that Wes and Keeley took as they walked home. Once again, Wes directed the officers to the telephone box where he claimed Keeley and him separated. By 9 p.m., authorities and those who knew Keeley were all desperately searching for her, hoping to find her alive and well. Maybe this was all just a misunderstanding, but that is not what they found. After about an hour and a half into searching Wigington Park, Jason started focusing his attention along the railway line. Nearby, there was a tunnel, and he thought that that might be somewhere useful to look. As he got closer, he saw that there was a brook right by the tunnel that initially was too dark for him to see. Again, it was nighttime, and it was hard to see much of anything. But as he looked closer at the brook, he saw something red that was partially submerged underwater and under a large pile of branches. He shined his light at this object, and in that moment, an off-duty officer who was helping in the searches heard a harrowing scream. That officer would later describe that what he heard that day is probably the most horrendous scream that he had heard in his life. In that moment, Jason Brown saw the light glisten on a bracelet that was on an arm beneath the water. And in that moment, Jason knew that he had just discovered the deceased body of his niece, 20-year-old Keeley. Right away, officers rushed to the scene, and by 9:28 p.m., after paramedics arrived to try and save her life, they realized that Keeley was already dead. In that moment, all the hope that family had of reuniting with their precious Keeley were completely shattered. Someone had ripped the life away from this beautiful, kind, caring, compassionate young woman. It was just so heartbreaking for everybody who knew her. After finding Keeley's body, she was sent off to the medical examiner for an autopsy. The medical examiner found that Keeley had suffered hemorrhaging to her eyes caused by pressure to the blood vessels. He also found that Keeley had scratches and bruises all over her face and forehead. She had deep bruising beneath the surface of the skin on the right side of her face, including her upper and lower lip, as well as on the lower part of her neck. She also had a laceration on her lower lip as well. They also found defensive wounds. One in particular was a scratch on her neck, which the medical examiner said was most likely from Keeley trying to grab her neck and fight off her attacker. He noted that there was no sign of any sort of traumatic brain injury or other types of blunt trauma to her head. She was also found to have low levels of alcohol in her system. In fact, she was under the legal limit for driving. However, they did find trace amounts of weed and ecstasy in her system, but again, they were low enough at that point that they wouldn't have inhibited her all that much at the time of her death. The medical examiner determined that her cause of death was the result of strangulation. Now, going back to when police first made contact with West Street, where they had him in the back of their patrol car, asking him to retrace their steps from the previous night. Well, during this time, the officers who were securing the scene of where Keeley's body was found contacted the officers who were with Wes and notified them of the body. They were told to take Wes's cell phone to search it for evidence, so they did just that. But it was at that point that Wes started to get antsy. As he rode in the back of that car, he started complaining to the officers, saying that he felt like they were blaming him. He said that he thought all he had to do was talk to them, and it felt like at that time he was the one being blamed. He said that he didn't want the cops going through his Google searches and laughing at him, but the officers explained that this was all just part of the process. They needed to rule him out. They aren't trying to blame him or pin anything on him. They just want to make sure that they are being thorough.
No.
It's not what you want, is to be back in the police car.
I just feel like I'm getting the blame.
No one's blaming you.
You said when I was at the house that all I needed to do was speak to the officer, and then I can go and look for Keeley, and then you take my phone off.
But as my colleague said, at the minute, there's a lot of people involved in what's happening, of which we are PCs, and there are people who are a lot higher up than us who are making decisions.
Yeah. I don't. Cause now, when you say you're going to take my phone, now I feel like you're blaming me.
No, we haven't blamed, mate. We haven't once since we've been sat in this car. I think your dad can vouch. We haven't once blamed you for anything. All we've done, we've been told by our bosses that we need to take us on the take on the scene, where it's gone, the route. So have a drive of the route, and we are literally just following those instructions. And I know you've got a lot of questions, and I know your parents have probably got a lot of questions, but and I think it's obvious when I say that we've been with you, so I can't answer those questions because we've been sat in the car.
Yeah. They have to do what they're told, and from the police side, they've got like a tick sheet. They have to make sure that there isn't anything on your phone. Yeah. And they have to kind of cross you out.
Yeah, I get
so
this isn't just for the sake of it. They've obviously done it for a reason, and it's to help. Yeah. So
that's all we want to do. We want to help.
And it's scary, and they understand that it's scary. Okay.
Yeah. I just don't want them to go through my Google.
No, they're not worried about that.
Don't
worry about it's the girl, Wes.
Yeah.
But Wes, all we're going to look for on your phone is going to be things that relate to you and her, right? We don't care about your Google. Yeah. We're not allowed to look for stuff like that because ultimately we don't need to do it. Because it has to be transparent, mate. That's all it is. All right.
He doesn't understand.
Oh, sorry.
But finally, by 10:46 p.m., police felt like they had enough reasonable suspicion to believe that Wes may have had something to do with Keeley's death. So at that time, they did arrest Wes and booked him into the station, where they sat Wes down and told him to tell them everything that happened that night. Wes started off by telling officers that he had a mad week after his nan fell ill. He asked a lot of questions about the court process and basically asked the officers why they even mentioned court, and they explained that the warning doesn't necessarily mean that he will go to court. It just means that whatever he says can be used in court if it does get to that point. Once again, he is just worried about himself and worried that he's being blamed for this. Wes also talked about his parents, saying that they're probably worried about him, and the police assure him that they are contacting his parents to let them know what is going on. The entire time, he adamantly denied that he had anything to do with Keeley's death, reiterating the story that he told before about how he walked her most of the way home, but he left her alone at that telephone booth and doesn't know what happened to her after.
Is that what time it is now?
Yeah, that's the time we arrived here. All right. We have to take a note of it.
Yeah. All right. Do I kind of lean on this wall here?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, if you want to. Yeah. It's just a cheap wall. Yeah. It's just soft.
This is what we do. It is. It's scary, but not scary in a way.
The sergeant, when you get there, the sergeant will explain everything.
Yeah.
So you got any questions, you'll answer.
Because
because basically there's a custody sergeant here that looks after
everyone.
So you're, go through your welfare, your legal rights. Yeah. And if there's anything that you want,
I'm shivering.
Yeah, well, that's natural, mate.
Well,
because you're cold.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's sort of blanket and stuff like that. It will all, you just basically there's people that work here to make sure that people are coming.
Just help out. Yeah, I know what you mean. Whatever he says, just tell him the truth.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because he'll need to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
And all those questions are just to check that you're okay.
Yeah.
And that he knows how to look after you. That's all.
Oh.
He or she, I should say.
Have you had any alcohol or drugs in the last 24 hours?
Yes, I have had alcohol.
What did you have and when did you have that?
Probably got to from around about 11ish, somewhere near that time, and I was drinking vodka.
11 o'clock last night?
Yeah, it was at Snipes.
You've said when I've asked you if you're going to harm yourself, you said no. How are you feeling now? I don't know. Have you had any alcohol or drugs? You've answered yes to me. You added vodka and Red Bull last night. You're not dependent on alcohol or drugs. You're not allergic to anything. And you haven't got any dietary needs or religious needs. And there's nothing else that I need to know about that might affect you while you're here.
Yeah.
Would you say that's accurate?
Can we change it?
Which one?
Where it says I don't know. It's
Yeah.
a bit sad.
A bit sad.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not a
I
problem.
wouldn't even say a bit sad. I'll just say sad.
Sad. Okay.
You can't really.
Change that for you.
However, as police continued their investigation, they found information that would throw a wrench in Wes's entire story. They actually found CCTV footage from a rugby club in Tamworth, located in Wigington Park. On that footage, police saw Wes and Keeley walking together near that rugby clubhouse at around 4:20 a.m. Remember, we know that from earlier, Wes and Keeley left Monique's place at around 4 a.m., and Keeley's place was about a 20-minute walk away from Monique's. So even though Wes didn't give a specific time of when he parted ways with Keeley, he made it sound like they went straight to that phone booth before he went home. That would have been around 4:20 a.m., given what we know about the distance walked. He never once mentioned stopping at Wigington Park. So them being at that park in the first place contradicted what Wes was saying. Then on the footage, police saw Wes and Keeley hugging before moving to the right, just out of sight of the camera. After that, as far as I have seen, they are not seen on the footage again that night. But that following day, they saw CCTV footage that showed Wes returning to that park, most likely to collect and get rid of as much evidence from the park as he could. Then, after examining Wes's cell phone records, officers were able to confirm, based on his location data, that he was in the location of Wigington Park at the very time that CCTV footage captured him there. It showed that he was at the park for an hour that night. Not only that, but his cell phone showed that after the initial visit, he returned to the park 6 additional times that day. Then, when searching the area more extensively, they found that Wes's bank card was found on the ground between that rugby club and where Keeley's body was found. They also found his jacket in the park, and on the lower parts of his sleeves on the jacket, they found stains that matched the type of makeup that Keeley was wearing that night. So again, we know that Keeley was strangled, so that would make sense if, her makeup was on the bottom parts of his sleeves. That's where your hands would be if you're strangling someone and if they're moving around and fighting against you. It would make sense that makeup ends up on this part of his sleeve, so that sort of told investigators everything that they needed to know. When confronted with this new information, Wes changed his story about what happened that night. He was now admitting that the two did walk over to the park, and he admitted that he was there when she died. But the story he told was bizarre. He claimed that he tried jumping on Keeley's back playfully to get a piggyback ride. But this caused her to accidentally fall and hit her head on a gate post. He said that after she fell, he picked her up and cradled her, and that is when he saw her eyes were flickering. He knew that something was wrong, so he panicked and left her there. He didn't want to be blamed for something that was a complete accident. He denied that anything sexual took place whatsoever. However, we know that according to Keeley's autopsy, there was no sign of blunt force trauma to her head, so officers knew from the get that this story was a lie. There was no way that she died from hitting her head. She was strangled. That information was confirmed. But that was the story that Wes stuck with for months as the investigation continued. After finding that CCTV footage, reviewing those cell phone records, and finding those items in the park, which all proved that Wes had been at that park with Keeley, they still needed to prove that the story he was telling was a lie. According to her autopsy, it was clear that she had intercourse before her death, and police knew that this was not consensual. They knew that Wes had raped her. She had been strangled, and you don't just strangle someone to death while having consensual relations with them. Police did end up finding DNA in Keeley's body associated with sexual assault. It's not specifically stated anywhere that I could find exactly what the DNA was, but I would assume that it was from semen or maybe skin cells or something like that. But either way, this DNA was tested, and it did come back as matching to Wes. So now, along with everything else, they knew that Wes had sexual relations with Keeley before her death. He could no longer deny that. With this new information, police went and questioned Wes again. By now, he had already told 2 different stories about what happened. In this interview, police once again confronted Wes with the DNA evidence that proved sexual relations happened that night. So of course, Wes changed his story again to fit this evidence. Now, Wes was saying that when they walked home that night, the two started getting flirty with each other. Wes described that Keeley was sort of teasing him. He said that they weren't touching each other or anything like that, she just looked at him in a very fun and flirty way. He said that once they reached the park, they started kissing. Things progressed from there, and he said that the two had consensual sex in the park. He said that she seemed happy while they were having sex. He said that as they were going at it, he put his arm around her neck, and that is when he accidentally killed her. He said that after he realized she died, he freaked out and didn't know what to do. So he just left her there. He said that after leaving her there, he returned later to put some branches over her body to hide it so that nobody would find her. When he hid the body, he claimed that he thought to himself, "Why me? I didn't mean for this to happen. Why am I in this position?" He said that he was scared and he didn't even feel like himself. There was a lot going on in his head. He was a mess, and he didn't know what to do. Now, when Wes was first taken in after the death, he did have a scratch on his face. Of course, it's thought that this scratch was from Keeley fighting him off. However, he explained to officers that after hiding Keeley's body, he returned back home. He said that he started playing with his dog, an 8-year-old Staffy, and the dog actually scratched his face. It was just his dog playing around, getting a little bit rough. He said that the scratch had nothing to do with Keeley. But I'm sure, as you can guess, investigators did not buy this version of the story either. Based on how she was found, how many injuries she had, and the fact that he clearly was lying over and over and over again, police knew that their sexual encounter was not consensual. They knew that her death was not accidental. Because at some point, if you are strangling someone for pleasure, I guess, or choking them or whatever, they would start fighting you. They would start struggling and showing clear signs that they are not enjoying this, that you need to stop. So the fact that he kept going after that, because even if you are into that type of thing, your body will naturally react in a way to stop what is happening to you when it feels like it's threatened, when it feels like you are about to die. You will start flailing, you will start kicking, you will start fighting just as a natural reaction. So there's no way that he wouldn't have known that Keeley was dying and that this strangling was going too far. Then, as if the whole situation with Keeley wasn't enough, through their investigation, police realized that Keeley was not the first victim of Wes's. Turns out, he has a much longer history of sexual assault than anybody had known. Dating back to 2015, an underage girl, so someone less than 16, reported that Wes followed her into a bathroom, locked the door behind them, and tried forcing her to perform sexual acts on him. Once she got away from him, a few days later, he found her again and groped her. He then put his hand down her pants without her consent. In 2017, yet another underage victim came forward to report that Wes tried to force himself on her. He asked her repeatedly to have sex with him, with her saying no every single time, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. He started groping her and putting his hand in her clothes against her will. She tried pushing him off of her before she finally was able to get away. The only reason he let her leave in that situation was because she said that her mom texted her and she would know that something was up if she didn't go home right away. Then in 2019, another woman, this time she wasn't underage, but she came forward to say that once again, Wes forced himself on her. He said that Wes put his hands down her pants and she told him, "No, I don't want to do this." Despite this, he took her clothes off and raped her. She ended up saying that she eventually just let it happen because she knew that he was not about to take no for an answer. She feared for her safety if she fought too hard. She then reported the incident to police, but I don't think anything was done because she told the officers that he wasn't violent, only that he forced himself on her and that she sort of let it happen again because she was afraid of what he would do. Clearly, we can see that Wes is not the type of person who will take no for an answer. If he wants to have sex, he feels entitled to it, and he will get what he wants regardless of what anybody says. So because of all of these witnesses coming forward, as well as all of the evidence they found with Keeley's murder, Wes was charged with the murder and rape of Keeley Bunker, the rape of a woman over the age of 16, the rape of a child under the age of 16, and sexual activity with a minor, as well as 3 additional charges of sexual assault. Wes pleaded not guilty to all 8 charges. Wes's trial for these charges started in July of 2020. The prosecution was arguing that on the night of September 19, 2019, Wes was walking his dear friend Keeley home after a long night of partying and drinking. But as they walked, they went to the park. There, things got a bit flirty, and maybe Keeley even kissed him consensually. But at that point, Wes wanted to take it a step further. He wanted to have sex with her. And although there is no way to know 100%, it is assumed that Keeley probably said no. She only saw Wes as a friend and never wanted anything sexual with him. But based on what we know about Wes's past behaviors, Wes probably refused to take no for an answer. So he raped Keeley. And as he did that, he was strangling her, probably to get her to stop fighting. Then after getting off and murdering his childhood friend, he dumped her body in the brook like it was trash. He put her in that creek and then covered her with some branches to try and conceal what he did. The prosecution said that just based on how she was found with her clothes in disarray and just the manner in which her body was left, it was clear to everyone in that courtroom that this sexual encounter was not consensual. Then Wes fled the scene, but he returned back several times. He tried hiding her body better and tried gathering any evidence that he left at the scene, but as we know, he left behind his jacket and bank card. They brought up the CCTV footage, the cell phone data, the DNA, as well as everything else they found at the scene. They also argued that Wes was not frantic or panicked after the attack. They said that based on witnesses at home, he went home and went to sleep after the attack. The prosecution also talked about all of the horrible injuries that Keeley had suffered. The scratches on her face, which showed she tried fighting off her attacker. The bruising on her face and neck. None of that was indicative of an accident. Then they mentioned just how long it takes to strangle someone. It takes a considerable amount of force and a lot of time to strangle the life out of someone. You don't just press on someone's neck a bit too hard and then they just suddenly die. It has to be intentional. Then the prosecution discussed how many times Wes had lied. He lied to Keeley's friends and family when he pretended to search for her. He lied to the police when he was picked up, once again telling a false story. Then, every time he was confronted with new evidence, he changed up his story to try and fit the new evidence. In total, he gave 3 different stories. In trial, when he was asked why he lied so many times, he said that he was embarrassed to tell anybody what happened. He was embarrassed that he accidentally killed his friend during sex. He didn't know how to explain to people how it happened. It's just really embarrassing. He continued to say to everybody in that courtroom that he never intended to cause any serious injury to Keeley. He said that he wasn't selfish, he didn't enjoy lying, nor did it come easily to him. He said that he was scared, but he didn't know what to do, so he just kept lying. But he said that now he is telling the truth and everybody should believe him. The prosecution also brought up the stories from those 3 other victims whose stories all showed that Wes had a very long, violent history of forcing himself on women and children. The defense, on the other hand, they argued that this whole thing was just a horrible accident. They continued to say that the sexual encounter between Wes and Keeley was consensual and that he accidentally put too much pressure on her neck and accidentally killed her. He never intended to harm her. But at the end of it, after hearing all of the details that we've discussed up to this point, the jury was sent off for deliberations. And after deliberating for about 8 hours, they came back with their verdict. They were not at all convinced of Wes's story. They knew that based on the evidence, none of what happened to Keeley was consensual. So he was found guilty on all counts, including the rape and sexual assault charges for those 3 other victims. For this, he was given a sentence of life in prison with the minimum of 29 years served before he will be eligible for parole.
Wesley, you need to listen to me. Right. This moment in time, you're under arrest for suspicion of murder. Okay, you don't have to say anything. It may harm your defence if you do not mention my questions, something related to the court. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Okay?
I'll extend where we need to at the back. It says I'll adjust that bit first before we need to.
I think there's some audacity in his arrogance there in playing the martyr as to why are people blaming me when I left her at that phone box knowing full well where she was and what he'd done and the efforts he'd gone to concealing her to delay people finding her if ever. Her friend, and as did Keeley did, trusted him to walk her home that night. And there's only Wesley to blame that she didn't make it home.
Of course, after all of this, Keeley's friends and family are left devastated. The one person who Keeley was supposed to trust, her literal childhood friend, turned out to be the person that took advantage of her in the worst way possible. It's horrific and really makes you question everyone in your own life. If you can't trust someone you've known for your entire life, who can you really trust? It's truly terrifying to know that you can know someone their entire life and still not know their true colors. My heart absolutely breaks for Keeley, her friends, her family, and everyone else who loved her. She had so much more life to live, so much to give, and that was ripped away from her in the most depraved, sick way possible. She deserved so much more. But that is all I have for today's video, and now I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you agree with the prosecution with what happened? Do you think that Wes planned to rape her that whole time, or was it a spur-of-the-moment decision? Or do you believe Wes and think that it was an accident? Let's discuss this and any other thoughts that you have in the comments below. If you like this video, please make sure to go ahead and leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to turn that notification bell on so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Make sure you follow my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. All will be linked down below. Also, make sure you head to dimebeautyco.com/Shannon20 and enter Shannon20 at checkout to get 20% off of your skincare routine. If you have any case suggestions, please make sure to fill out the Google form, which is also listed down below. With that, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.